Welcome to Party Politics. I'm Jeronimo Cortina, a political science professor at the University of Houston.
And I'm Brandon Rottinghaus, a political science professor, also here at the University of Houston. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Party Politics. Jeronimo, I'm surprised to see you not wearing your tinfoil hat because it seems like we're being invaded by aliens.
Yeah.
That's all the talk of Washington.
Right. Well, I mean, no.
You're good? Okay.
Well, it's because it's kind of expensive,
okay.
aluminum paper.
Yeah.
So,
you recycle them. Do one and then keep using it, right?
Okay.
That's the way I would do
All right,
it.
fair enough.
Well, you're going to have to probably get this in the Senate briefing that's coming this week because in an unusual twist of events, we have more of these unidentified objects that are being shot down over U.S. soil. Lawmakers have demanded answers from U.S. officials. Basically, for the fourth time in 8 days, the U.S. has shot down a flying object. This latest one, as of our recording, was over Lake Huron near the Canadian border. This is an unusual series of events. We don't know what it is. They haven't really said it. The senators are getting a briefing to hopefully tell us it's not aliens, but they're telling us it's not aliens, right?
Right.
Initially, they said, well, we don't know what it is.
Right.
It could be aliens. And then they walked it back saying it's not aliens. But isn't it really aliens, though? Because the truth is out there. You just have to kind of look for it.
It's kind of confusing. Your logic is confusing me. So probably there are or,
there are,
or
right?
not.
Isn't that what the aliens want? They want us to be confused, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's like that. I just cannot remember. Oh, Aliens in the Attic.
There you go.
Okay. That's a good movie.
Oh, wow. That's a deep dive, right?
Yeah. Just like memory lane. There you go.
Well, China says that this basically is sort of retribution in a generic way, right? They're saying that the U.S. has flown balloons over Chinese airspace. The U.S. has said, no, that's not happening. So, again, it's hard to know exactly what's right here because everything is fairly clandestine. We know it's not aliens, right? Wink, wink.
Okay.
But there are some questions about sort of what they are, what they're doing, how many there are, and how many there have been. And these are the kind of things that politically, keep this sort of controversy alive, right? I mean, I think the Biden administration is dealing with a lot of issues. And to be honest, although this doesn't make them look that great, since obviously a lot of this falls on their shoulders, it seems to me like it's distracting people from other kinds of issues that they could be talking about.
True.
So maybe this is actually a welcome kind of wag the dog scenario.
Right.
Wag the balloon scenario.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, no, and it's interesting because we don't know even if we had these things before, and probably we were not paying attention because it's like just a balloon, just let it be. And now it's a balloon, let's go and shut it down.
They're spying on us,
Yeah, so, I mean, we don't know anything, so we'll keep an eye on it.
We will literally watch the skies for all of you.
Exactly, there you go.
Because it's part of our job here, part of the service we provide here at Party Politics.
There you go.
The other part of the service is actually talking about politics, and actually some interesting news this week is that Nikki Haley, the former governor of South Carolina and U.S. ambassador to the UN under Donald Trump, is announced she's running for president against her former boss. She said she wouldn't, and of course now she is.
Of course.
Maybe this is just the political world we live in, but basically you've got, I think, a new cohort of people who have to grapple with Donald Trump as a candidate after he lost the election. So there's a lot of pushback on Nikki Haley saying that, she was initially presented herself as a kind of Republican who didn't want to buy what Trump was saying, right? In particular, she had indicated that, she was the kind of candidate, the kind of Republican that was antithetical to Donald Trump, right? She was a child of immigrants. She was of the South, kind of moderate in a way. And now here she is kind of running for president in a world where it's very different than it was politically. So what do you make of kind of her choices here? Is this folly or is this bold?
Well, I think a little bit of both. So first of all, I think that I'm going to use her logic and not exercise.
Okay.
So at the end, I exercise, right?
Okay, good.
So I'm going to follow that particular logic. But I think it's very interesting. She posted that in a Twitter video, 3.5 minutes, right? And it has a lot. In 3.5 minutes, she packed a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So to me, like my first gut reaction, right, was I guess, kind of going back to Reagan years, right? It's a new day in America. Okay. She kept saying it's a great day in South Carolina, taking back some of those, I guess, 1980s Reagan-esque type of ideas in terms of conservatism. fiscal responsibility. Let's rediscover fiscal responsibility. Let's go back to basics. And then on the other hand, saying I did the right thing when South Carolina's massacre in terms of the shooting on a black church happened, took the Confederate flag from the Capitol, and then going back and say, but I'm anti-woke, right? And in the video, there is a image superimposed of Alexander Ocasio-Cortez saying, well, they're wrong and we're right. So there is a lot here to unpack. She goes after Trump, but not really. And it's in a very subtle way. So it's going to be interesting to see, right? And obviously, she doesn't shy away from her roots, right? Immigrant roots, and also taking, the American dream back to the forefront.
It's always been a strength of hers, and certainly that's why she was so popular for so long. This is going to be a tough race. There's no question. I mean, we're already here, right? 2024 is upon us. She's the only non-Trump entrant so far. Right. She's the only female so far. She's the only female that's even been discussed. And so she may be ultimately the only female in the crowd, which is really interesting. In fact, if you look at some of the way that she tried to generate some activity on social media, fully 60% of the ads were shown to women over 35. So it's clear where she's trying to pin this. But this is a very different kind of political world that she inhabits that was from before. So it's a Trump world now, and these other Republicans are just living in it. Trump controls the apparatus at the local level for a lot of these primaries. You've got a lot of loyalty there. The tone of politics is very different. The type of issues they talk about are very different. So can she set the stage here? Can she set the tone for the race here? I'm not sure because, Trump has really changed everything. Now, she's not going to be alone, right? It's likely that actually fellow South Carolinian, is that the right way to?
Yes.
South Carolinian? Okay.
Carolinians.
Carolinian. Tim Scott's going to join. It's possible that obviously Ron DeSantis has talked about. Mike Pence has been described as being a candidate. So there will be more people in the field, but obviously Trump is the one kind of wild card.
True, but I think that, she might bring an interesting, proposal at the table, to the table. So I think that, a lot of Republicans do not like the Trump brand.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Period. Right? A lot of Republicans understand that we live in a diverse world, right? That the world has changed. That diversity in terms of race, ethnicity, gender, so on and so forth are important, but also in terms of ideas, right? So diversity of ideas are extremely important. And she's walking, yes, indeed, a very fine line between, really, really getting on Trump's bad side. Yeah. But I think that she might bring something, to people say, I think this is the right way. Yeah. She's not going to be an old white man, right? Yeah. I mean, from the start. Yeah. And she brings that part of, going back to America, I'm a success story. I'm, that rosy picture of immigration that we all love. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Going back to those origins, bringing back the American dream. And I think that she might have, if she's able to thread the needle in a very, very, very careful way, I think that she might be someone that we really need to pay attention very closely.
I think so too. And I think for Donald Trump, the bloom is off the rose. You've got organizations like This Week who have announced that they no longer plan to back him in any way. In fact, even like the Club for Growth has gone so far to say is they're shopping for a candidate and they're going to put all their eggs in that basket. So we don't know who that'll be yet, but that's a pretty clear indication that the money is leaving Donald Trump. Not that he needs it, right? Because, he's able to generate so much free media. Right. But like I said, he kind of sets that tone. And I think you're right. That juxtaposition is really important for her to try to promote. But Trump takes so much oxygen out of the room that it's a real challenge. So we'll see. This is obviously going to unfold in all kinds of different ways, magnificent ways, as elections always do. So it won't be the last time we talk about that. But one thing that might be the last time we talk about is in Texas. Ken Paxton has agreed to apologize and to settle with whistleblowers a lawsuit that will have the state paying $3.3 million. Some of the kind of background for this were basically that these whistleblowers whistleblowers had accused Ken Paxton of some illegal actions. They were fired subsequently. These were 8 individuals, former top deputies, who accused him of bribery and abuse of office. They essentially were either resigned or were fired. They filed suit, and the result of that is that now there's been a settlement that the state has to pay.
Of course.
Just keep in mind this is not something that Ken Paxton personally will pay. This is basically a lawsuit against the state as in his role as Attorney General.
Right.
And now they have to pay. I don't know what more there is, honestly, to say about this. Like, it, is the case and has been the case that Ken Paxton has been so, like labeled with these scandals, and it doesn't seem to have any real political impact on him. I mean, a little bit at 18 we talked about. He got close. In 22, his numbers weren't as good as the other statewide officials, but this is still something that doesn't seem to resonate with people at all. So tell me what's happening here. Is this people don't care? They don't know? It's just a kind of drop in the bucket. We don't necessarily worry about our Attorney General engaging in illegal activities and then settling lawsuits. What do you make of this?
Well, I mean, first of all, I would settle. I mean, the Office of State Attorney General is going to pay that money, right? So we are paying for that money.
No, it's smart for everybody to settle, frankly. But politically, it means something, or at least it should mean something. But it never seems to. So
I mean, I don't know what to make of it. Yeah. I think that the apology is important, right? Because they demanded these. They were called rogue employees, right? Yeah. But now it's, I think, the apology, to a certain extent, admits fault one way or the other. Yeah. Perhaps not the one that has legal consequences, and perhaps the one that doesn't have, consequences with voters, because you're right. Yeah. People do not care about these things. Why, how, that's a different, we can devote, perhaps 10 podcasts and 10 episodes and 10 shows.
It's going to be, like a short limited run series of why scandals don't matter anymore. But you're totally right. Like, it's just something that hasn't really impacted the office. And I think we've talked about this before, but one of the reasons is that the Attorney General's office doesn't tend to get that much publicity. Yeah. Although, of course, Ken Paxton brings a lot of publicity to it because these sorts of things happen. Right. 2 things are important, I think, to me. Number one, I think you're seeing some legislative pushback. So Jeff Leach, who's the incoming chair of the House Judiciary and Civil Jurisprudence Committee, said, it's unacceptable this happening, right? And it's unsort of clear what he means exactly, except to say that using taxpayer money to pay this off is something that rubbed him the wrong way. So you could see hearings on this. But remember, speaking of Ronald Reagan, the 11th commandment for Reagan was, thou shalt not speak ill of another Republican. So I don't know how far you're going to go. But for sure, number 2, I think you're not going to see expanded powers to the Office of Attorney General, right? That's something that the AG has wanted. Yeah. Politically, he's strong and obviously in some ways impenetrable. And so I don't think you're going to see the lege excited to give the Attorney General's office more powers until Ken Paxton's gone. Yeah,
well, true. And the other point is here is like, yes, the 11th commandment, that is true. However, there is a point where these becomes too obvious, too much, right? Yeah. And people really notice that. Yeah. And people, especially Republicans, is like, what are we doing? Yeah. And they cannot, hide the sun with a finger. Yeah. So it's just something that they will need to address, and they will need to address very, very, very fast.
I like that, the hide the sun with the finger. That's good. Yeah, that's good.
When you go up and just do like these.
It's like you're pretending it's not there.
Exactly, but
it's still
there.
Very much there. Yeah,
absolutely. So I think that Republicans, Jeff Leach, I think highlight something very important. Yeah. It's like, I'm sorry, what? Yeah. Why are we losing $3.3 million of taxpayer money just to settle, the situation, right?
Something that shouldn't have happened to start with.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, I think on the same lines of, Republicans trying to sort of figure out their own internal way of going about things. This week was the State of the State. Every session, the governor gives the State of the State, which is basically a kind of laundry list of things the governor would like to see happen, including items to be able to kind of jumpstart that process. But Greg Abbott this particular year has decided not to give the speech in the chamber, which is normally where things take place. Now, Abbott did this in 2021 because of COVID, so for safety reasons, he had this at a separate facility. But now COVID seems to be less of an issue. The legislature is meeting, and things are more or less on regular pace. But the governor is still giving the speech in San Marcos. Yep. The capital of Texas is in Austin, where all the lawmakers will be. So I think it's interesting that you've got the governor here basically ignoring the legislature. I think it's really risky, right? Now, we know that the tension between the governor and the legislature is pretty high because there has been this friction where in the last session, the governor vetoed the funds for the legislature. Yeah. We shouldn't forget this because that really shapes the stage, I think, for this kind of difficulty. So I think it risks like isolating the legislators from this process. And the governor has got a pretty big to-do list, right? You've got to get vouchers through. You've got to get some pretty serious social, policy issues through. That's not something the Republicans are going to be kind of together on. So I think that he needs to be a lot more present than he is. And doing this speech in San Marcos where, people will watch, but I don't know how many lawmakers will necessarily watch is probably risky.
Well, I mean, certainly they're going to watch, right? But, are they going to do as they're told?
Interesting. That's the other part. Yeah. It's like, he's like, I don't need you. I can just tell you.
And that's exactly. And to me, it's certain the message, right? It's like, I'm very powerful. Yeah. I'm, just one re-election, very strong. Yeah. I have, a significant war chest that shields me against any potential political attack. And this is what you need to be doing. Yeah. So again, we know that politicians, by definition, are ambitious individuals. Yeah. They want to, propel their career forward. So I don't know if this gives them the opportunity, right, to coalesce around a anti-Abbott camp, right? That's one. And the other one is for those that are institutional, right? Institutionalist Republicans and also Democrats, right? It's like, wait a minute, we have a separation of powers because of a reason, right? That's, politics, American politics 101. Yeah. That's how the framers thought about our government. Yeah. So you need to really, take a step back and let us do our job. Yeah. So I think that's important. I'm not denying that he's extremely powerful governor, but also you have, as Spider-Man said, right? With great power comes great responsibility. Right. And I think that he needs to be very careful not to step over the other line because, the state legislature is going to say, enough.
Well, and everybody around Spider-Man was in danger all the time, right?
Yes, true.
And so, I think that's the problem he faces is that, he runs a risk of making these legislators angry and he needs their help. That's the way the Texas government functions. Yep. I mean, not to say that they're going to take it out on him because I think that's probably long gone, but he's not going to get the things he wants or the things the party maybe needs. Right. And so that's really where things are. Yep. And I think that's a real risk. But I want to talk about the Democrats for just a quick second, and that is that they had a kind of obvious response to this. They talked about the following issues: gun safety, the electricity grid, expanding Medicaid, opposing vouchers, the assault on LGBTQ rights, highlighting the Biden-Harris record on the border, investments in infrastructure, healthcare, small businesses. Did they overreach here? My thinking is that, if you go for everything, you go for nothing, right? And it's just basically a litany of things. Also, talking about how many great things Joe Biden did in a state where Joe Biden's supported by 33% of the people or whatever that terrible number is for him, seems like a bad choice, right? Yeah. So, again, it's like there are opportunities here to be able to kind of, wedge the Republicans against each other or to try to pick these popular issues that the Republicans aren't going to pick. So, for instance, the stuff they didn't talk about were legalization of marijuana, abortion policy, even gambling. These are things that are popular with people, but the Republicans probably won't pursue. So I think they probably missed an opportunity here to kind of really set the stage for kind of where they're going to be in opposition to the governor.
Oh, no, absolutely. I think you're 100% right. I think that, they need to focus on bread and butter issues, right? Talk about infrastructure. Talk about, broadband internet in rural areas. Yeah. Talk about, the issue of teachers' pay. Yeah. And those very, very narrow issues. Pick 1, 2, 3.
I agree.
And focus all the energy on those things, right?
Do an acronym or have a jingle. I don't care what it is, but something people remember that's this is what they stand for, because it looks to me like they sort of stand for everything that the Democratic Party stands for.
And these are important issues,
right? No, really, for sure. And these are their core issues that their constituency cares about. But it's not necessarily something that's going to get you to that next level, which is, frankly, winning elections. And that's really what they need. In addition to that, this week, the GOP Speaker of the House, Dave Phelan, announced committees. Some interesting things happened. The biggest picture was about, number one, how the Education Committee was stacked with people probably who aren't necessarily that supportive of vouchers. So that's unique. The other is that the Speaker appointed 8 Democratic chairs to standing committees and 1, the great Mrs. T, Sanfronia Thompson, to a select committee. That's a total of 9 Democratic chairs, which means I owe you lunch because we did over-under at 10. You said under, and you were right. This 24% share is the lowest minority party share. Some Republicans are crowing that they have won. So you have Representative Slayton say, our push to get fewer Democratic chairs has been successful. Okay. They did take Representative Dutton out of public education, which was going to be the kind of key committee for vouchers. But I'm not sure that issue really resonates with the rank and file, right? I mean, certainly like the sort of elites in the Republican Party care about who's chairing what, but most people don't care about that. So talk about that, and let me know what you think about the rest of the kind of particulars about the committee assignments.
Well, obviously, Republicans had a win, if you want to see it that way. Still, they did not win everything because there's Democratic chairs chairing some of these issues. For example, Harold Dunn now is in the Juvenile Justice and Family Issues Committee. You have Joe Moody in the Criminal Jurisprudence. Terry Canales is in Transportation. So you have, still, Democrats having very important control of it. And the important thing is that every piece of legislation that goes through the state house has to be vetted through a committee, right? Yeah. And that has very, very important implications because each committee member, votes on them. But the important thing is that even if a bill is heard, the committee chairs decide if they're going to vote on it or not. Yeah. And if they're going to, send it to the calendars committee or not. So
they're gatekeepers.
Exactly. So there is a lot of power in these particular issues. Yeah. And I think that Democrats have an opportunity here in advancing some of these, very narrow issues, especially, talking about transportations, right? Talking about, juvenile justice and family issues, the foster care system. You have also, as you said, Sanfronia Thompson on the Select Committee on Youth, Health, and Safety. Super important on these issues. So I think there's movement, and it was, the Spear film trying to be like, okay, I need to walk this very fine line, and this is what happened.
That's what I thought, too, is that Phelan kind of gave them a little bit of what they wanted, but not everything, which is frankly the mark of a good speaker. And he's been very careful about this. But here's something interesting, that almost all of the Democrats who are given committee chair positions are Latinos. And so obviously the Republicans have been trying to kind of increase their representation there. This might be that opportunity. Locally here, the Elections Committee was shaken up. Briscoe Cain was given the Agriculture and Livestock Committee, which is exactly what you'd want if you were from Houston, replaced there. So that might be interesting. Ryan Guillen, who was a former Democrat, now Republican, is going to be chair of Homeland Security, which is a pretty high-profile position. So they want to protect him as a new Republican. But speaking of bills, let's talk about Dan Patrick's priority bills. There's a huge array of very conservative things here, increasing the homestead exemption, parental rights in terms of school choice, banning drag shows, banning obscene books in libraries. Ultimately, this is a clear move to the right for Patrick, especially after an election. He's been more or less governing from the right and for the right for a long time, in part because he's been able to shape the Senate in a way that works for him. So what do you make of these policy choices and the possibility that they're actually going to pass?
I mean, it's a move to the right indeed, right? It's those issues, once again, that are cultural issues, right? These are very, very, red meat issues that just feed a very particular part of the constituency.
The rarer, the better, right?
Exactly. So, from a policy perspective, right, in terms of, sense, in terms of economic growth, in terms of how competitive Texas is going to be in the next 10, 15, 50 years, should we be focusing on whether one book or not book is appropriate for a school? I mean, we have librarians, and librarians spend a lot of time, right, deciding what it is and what is not appropriate for a school kid. You know, and I trust them. Very much so.
They're always telling you to shush, so you respect it. You're like,
exactly.
Okay, well, I shouldn't be being too loud.
Exactly, right? So I think, you know, it's that. But I don't think that eventually is, you know, his legacy, right, as a, you know, very powerful lieutenant governor, as someone that could actually pave the road for, you know, greatest Texas lieutenant governor going through history. I think that perhaps he should focus also on other issues. And to be fair, he has also, obviously, the electric grid, the power grid is in his big priorities, and natural gas, so on and so forth.
Scholarships for nurses. I mean, there's some stuff here. Instead of being the most powerful lieutenant governor, he's being the most divisive. And sometimes those things go hand in hand, but it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Let's talk Houston before we run out of time here. Council member Robert Gallegos is the lone Latino on the city council. He's running for mayor. Interesting. What do you make of this in a 15-second soundbite?
I think that, you know, Houston is 45% Latino. If he's able to win, it would be a historic movement. I think he has the experience. He has been, you know, he has 9 years in city council. He knows the city problems. He knows how the city is governed. From a policy perspective, I think he has a lot to bring to the table, a lot of experience. And it would be interesting. I mean, at the end, unfortunately, it's going to be an issue of fundraising, right?
Yeah. It's easier to get your name ID up than to get your money up. It's going to be a strength test for the Latino vote, right? It's never been as prominent, and so he's going to test that.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about these and other very important issues next week.
Thanks for watching and listening. Appreciate everybody here at Houston Public Media for making us look and sound so good.
I'm Jeronimo Cortina.
And I'm Brandon Rottinghaus. We'll see you next week.